All right, so now we're going to talk about strong verbs. Well, what is a strong verb? This is a verb that conveys a lot of precise meaning without the help of modifiers or qualifications. Strong verbs don't need any help. They are strong, right? Like bull. They will make your writing more concise. They will help you to avoid vague descriptions, and overall, they will just keep your reader more interested in what you have to say. So, is not having a variety of strong verbs a bad thing? Is it always wrong? No. Sometimes generic verbs are appropriate. Consider a technical writer if you are writing instructions for something. If you use the word fabricate, maybe some of your readers aren't going to know what that means. Sometimes make is the right word. So it doesn't always have to be fancy. It's just that some occasions may call for stronger verbs than others. So how can you tell if you're using strong verbs or not? Well, first of all, you have to find all of your verbs. Look at them all and ask yourself, are the verbs repetitive? Are they, the same verb showing up over and over again? Or you want to check in and see if your verbs are conveying precise and evocative meanings. In other words, they paint a picture. Are they specific? What are we talking about here? Well, let's look at this paragraph, right? We have systematic poverty is a consequence of structural disparities, not individual choices. In contemporary American society, people often have to select either personal fulfillment or economic security. But many people do not even have that choice. Inadequate education, healthcare, nutrition all make people less likely to have the opportunity to get personal fulfillment or economic security, let alone both. Okay, so let's look at our verbiage here. Well, we have an is, right? And then we have a have. And then we have a, have, do not have, it's negative. And then we have a make, and then we have a to get, right? So technically our infinitives here, right, to have and to get, they're not really verbs, but for our purposes in this video, they're verbs enough for us to figure out if they're strong or weak. Well, let's look at this. In this excerpt, 3 out of 6 of our verbs are some version of have, so this is a little bit repetitive. Also, we have an is, we have a have, and we have get. These are relatively imprecise words. Look at this sentence right here. We have she is happy, right? Well, that means pretty much the same thing as she grinned broadly, but she grinned broadly. Grinned gives us a lot more information than just hit is, right? Is very generic. So grinned would be a stronger verb, is would be a weaker verb. So, how can you revise your writing in order to include more of those strong verbs? Well, you want to go through, find your verbs, replace those that are repetitive, and anything that is non-precise. So, let's try this out. This is our first sentence, right? Systematic poverty is a consequence of structural disparities. So if we can change this and get rid of the is, we can say systematic poverty results from. So instead of saying is a consequence of, you just say results, and then we're done. So it's a lot shorter, more concise, and more specific. Instead of giving me like a generic is, I have a stronger verb. Now, moving on to the next sentence, we have people often have to select, right? So rather than have to select, we could just make that must choose. And must choose is also more succinct because it's fewer letters or fewer words, and it also gives us more of that sense of what it is we actually mean. In addition, it gets rid of the extra have that we have here. So we've knocked one of our haves out. Moving on, now we get to the sentence, right? But many people do not even have that choice. Well, if we revise the previous 2 sentences, then we can keep this have. Not all haves are bad. It's just when you have a lot of them over and over again that things get sketchy. So because we've changed it, this one is fine as is. So let's look at this last little bit here, right? We have inadequate education, healthcare, all of these things make people less likely. Well, the idea that we're trying to convey is that these things rob people of the opportunity. This is a lot stronger language, and it gives the reader a chance to see how the writer feels about the topic, and that's another thing that strong verbs will do for you. They will give you a sense of your opinion towards things, because make people less likely, rob people of the opportunity, that's some serious opinionated language. Also, instead of just saying get, right, we have this vague get here, we've changed it to achieve, right? Achieve has more of a sense that fits more the formal tone that we have here. So those are some ways to change your strong verbs, or change your weak verbs into strong verbs. Well, what are some common reasons for a lack of strong verbs? Well, you're going to have those is and has. Like I said, not bad, but it's the over-reliance on them that turns it into a bad thing. look at these two sentences. We have Malcolm has a hard time writing papers, right? He is very good at drawing though, is. Well, why not just say Malcolm struggles with papers and he draws very well? Now we have draws and struggles. Still means, the same thing, but it's a lot clearer. Or, if we're not messing around with is and has, another issue you may run into is this excessive nominalization. Well, what is a nominalization? This is when you end up with demonstration instead of demonstrate, or destruction instead of destroy, or hopefulness from hopeful. Look at the sentence. We have Watson and Crick made the announcement of the discovery of DNA. Well, why not just say announce they had discovered, right? That's shorter and more to the point, right? And you get rid of these extra, made the, of the. So those are specific verbs as opposed to nominalizations. A final issue that you might have with strong verbs is the problem of toning it down. A lot of times when we're writing, we don't want to be pinned down. We don't want to be specific. So you end up with sentences like, exporting e-waste to developing countries can lead to poor environmental consequences. Well, you sort of said something here, but you're being really, really vague and hedging a lot in your writing. So if you're going to have an opinion, have an opinion. Say something like, exporting e-waste to developing countries destroys the environment. Just own it, and use your strong verbs to show here's exactly what you mean. Now, like I said before, this is not to say that other verbs like is and gets and have are bad things. It's just that you want to have a variety of different verbs in your writing. So overall, just remember, you want to use strong verbs when they're appropriate because they will strengthen your writing when they allow you to avoid repetitive or imprecise verbs.